Okay, good morning students. In today's lecture, we will study what the conditional statements is, what are the different types of conditional statements that are provided by C language, and where we should prefer to use the conditional statements, what are their different types. We will study in detail, and we will also cover many of the programs related to the conditional statements in today's lecture. Well, now let's move ahead and start what the conditional statement is. Conditional statement is also called a branching statement, and whenever you want to execute certain set of statements depending upon whether a particular condition is true or false, whether if the condition is true, we want to execute some other set of statement, and when the condition is false, we want to execute some another set of statement. Means two different set of statements as we want to execute depending upon some condition, whether the condition is true or false. If it is true, we want to execute some set of statement, otherwise we want to execute some other set of statement. In that situation, whenever we want to apply the conditions in our program, we will use this conditional statement. That is also called a branching statement, because by default the flow of our program are basically sequential. Means our program by default execute statement by statement, but if we want to break the flow of our program in different branches, in that situation we will use the conditional statements. That's why it is also called branching statement. Loop statement we will cover in next part. And now what the conditional statements is. Conditional statements are used to execute a group of statements if some condition is true, otherwise if condition is false, then other group of statements are to be executed. In that situation we will use conditional statement, as I have already told you. What are the different types of conditional statements provided by C language? It is of two types: if statement and switch statement. If statement are of four types, and switch case statements we will cover one by one. Firstly, let's move ahead about the if statement. If statement is also called a two-way decision making statement. It is also called a two-way decision making statement, and there are four types of if statements available in C language. Firstly, simple if statement, then if else statement, then if nested if else statement, and then if else if ladder statement. If statements are of four types, and there is a switch case. Means we collectively can say that there are five types of conditional statements provided by the C language: simple if else, nested if else if ladder, and switch case. Now let's understand it one by one. If statement, if it is a simple if statement, if it is used when we want to execute a particular statement or set of statement when a condition is true. If we want to execute particular set of a statement only when a particular condition is true, in that situation we will use the simple if statement, and the syntax for that is we write if keyword, and in bracket we write the test expression, that is also called the conditions, and if this condition is true, the statement to be executed are put within this curly braces, and then the rest of the code are written. The statement number 1 to n will execute only when the test expression is true. If the test expression here, the test expression at the place of this test expression, we write some conditions by using some relational expressions, relational operators, and when the condition is true, the statement number 1 to n will be executed. And after this, if this condition is test expression condition is false, then the statement 1 to n will not execute. means when we want to execute particular set of statements, when a particular condition is true, in that situation if statement is used, and we will follow this syntax to write the code in C language. This is the syntax of C language for if statement, and if we want to implement it in C, we have to follow this syntax only. Now the statement block will execute when the condition is true, test expression comes true, and here is the flow chart for the same. Here we first test the expression. If the test is true, then the statement block from statement number 1 to n will execute, and then the rest of code will execute. If the condition is false, the compiler will directly, the control will directly move to the statement number x only. Means statement block will only execute when the condition is true. Now this how it evaluates. First the test expression is evaluated. If the result of test expression is true, then the statement block inside the if statement is executed and control comes out of the block. If the condition otherwise, if the condition is false, the control will come out of this block and execute the statement just after that block. Here is a program for we can understand this if statement by writing this program. For example, I have written a program, write a program to check whether a number is absolute or not, or write a program to find the absolute value of a given number. If a number is negative, we also know that the absolute value of -4 is 4. The absolute value of 4 is 4, means we want to ignore the negative symbol, and for that I have written a program. I have included the header files, required header files, and then as we all know that the main program of C always start with the main function. I have declared a variable n of int type, then I have written enter a number will be scanned in variable n, and if n is less than 0, then I have assigned -n to the n variable, okay, and print the absolute value of this value. If n is less than 0, so minus of minus value will be positive, and hence it gives the absolute value, and thus this way we just assign -n to the n variable. If the value of n is -3, so minus of -3 is +3, that is assigned to n, and that absolute value of n has been printed. This way we can find the absolute value of a number, and output of this program, if the value is -12, the result will be absolute value equals to 12. If state, then we comes to the next conditional statement, that is if else statement. And if else statement is really two-way decision making statement. As the name suggests, if this happen, do this, otherwise do that. This situation, here we are making two-way branching, two-way decision making. If the condition is true, we execute particular set of statement. Otherwise, if that particular condition is false, we will execute some other set of statement. And syntax for this if else statement is very simple. We write if, and in bracket we write the text expression, and if the test expression evaluates to be true, then the statement block will be executed. Otherwise, we write the else keyword, and in here we make the false block. The statement block 1 will execute when the test expression becomes true. Otherwise, statement block 2 will be executed. Means else part will execute when the test expression evaluates false. True part means in the statement block 1, if the block of the if statement will execute when the test expression comes to the true. Means if the test expression is true, the statement block 1 will execute. otherwise statement block 2 will execute. Depending upon the test expression, any one of the two blocks will execute, and this is really the two-way branching. Now here is the flow chart. We firstly test the expression. If it evaluates to be true, the statement block 1 execute, otherwise if it evaluates false, the statement block 2 execute, and finally the rest of the code outside this if else will execute. Now let's this is just we have already I have already explained that first the test expression evaluated. If its result true, the statement block 1 within the if will execute, otherwise it goes to the else block and the statement block 2 will execute. Now here is a program to find the larger of two numbers. If we want to, I want to find the larger of two number, I have input two number, I have written a main function, then I have declared two variable to take the two values in these variables, and I have written a message, enter two value of a and b, we have entered two number and scanned it in a and b variable, and after that if a is, I have checked a condition, if a is greater than b, then print a is larger, %d is larger, comma a means at the place of format specifier the value of a will be printed, and means a is larger will be evaluated. Else if that condition a greater than b false means b is greater, so in else part we just written that b is larger, and if we take the input of a is 56 and b as 25, the result will be 56 is larger. Okay, now there is another program to check whether the given number is even or odd, and for the same I have written the same code. I have taken a number, a variable a, and for in a variable we will take a number as input. By this scanf I have taken input in the variable a, the number will be input in a, and I have just checked if a modulus 2 equals to 0, means if a is divisible by 2, I have written in true block, I have written %d is even, comma a means a is even, otherwise else I have written a is odd, means the number a will be divided by 2, and if its remainder come to be 0 means it is divisible by 2, then it's even, otherwise it's odd, and this way either it will, the number is even or odd, corresponding block will execute, and we get whether we will able to check whether the number a is even or odd. Now if the user input a number 36, it will be printed as 36 is even. Now nested if else statement. Nesting means, nested if means if within if, nested if else means if else within if else. If there are nesting of more than one if else statement, then that is called nested if else statement. And nested if else statement syntax is like this: if this is if test expression 1, and if it's evaluate true if statement, then I have another times I have written if test expression 2, then test statement block 1 execute, means statement block for to reach at statement block 1, test expression 2 and test expression 1 both must be true, then only the control will come to the statement block 1. And in this else part, statement block 2, the control will come when the test expression 1 is true and test expression 2 is false. Means for reaching statement block 2, internally the test expression 2 must be false, and to come here the first test expression must be true. This way there may be a number of nested, the depth of nesting is unlimited, but the main concept is that nesting is done when we wants to make a number of conditions to be mandatory. If we want to apply a number of things to be mandatory to execute a particular set of statement or execute some another set of statement, we have to use this nested if else statement. If we want to execute particular set of statement depending upon a number of conditions, if this condition is true, if that is true, if that is true, if that is true and that is false, in that situation this particular code execute. If we want to make this type of conditions to apply on a particular code to be execute, in that situation we will use this nested if statement. And here I have written else part also, and in else part I have checked a condition test expression 3, and if test expression 3 is true, then statement block 3 execute, and if test expression 3 is false, the statement block 4 will execute. Now understand the thing. To reach at is test expression 3, the first test expression 1 must be false. Then only I have written it in from red color. Red color test expression means test expression 1 must be false to reach the else part of this red if statement. And test expression 1 is false, then we will come to the else part of this red part, and then the if the test expression is 3 is false, then the condition will go to the statement block 4, and if it is true, the statement will go to the statement block 3. Now summarize the thing. To execute statement block 1, test expression 1 and test expression 2 must be true. To execute statement block 2, test expression 2 must be false and 1 must be true. Then only we will come here. Test expression for executing statement block 3, test expression 3 must be true and test expression 1 must be false. To execute the statement block 4, test expression 3 must be false and test expression 1 must also fall to reach here. This way we can see that there are two conditions has to be applied to execute particular block to be executed, and that's the situation where we want to apply more than one conditions to be applied to execute a particular set of statement. Then only we prefer this nested if else statement. To make the conditions more complex, we use it. Now I have applied this concept, and there is the flow chart for the same, and test expression 1 is evaluated. If it is true, the test expression 2 is evaluated. Then if it is false, statement block 1 execute, otherwise statement block 2 is execute. If it is false, statement block 2 is execute. If the test expression 1 is false, then we check the test expression 3. If it is true, then statement block 3 execute, otherwise statement block 4 execute, and finally the statement after the nested if else will execute. This is the flow chart for the same concept that we have just covered. Now I have written a program to demonstrate the concept of nested if else. There is a program to check whether a year is leap year or not. Okay, and to check whether a year is leap year or not, firstly I have entered a year number in the year variable, and firstly I have checked whether a century year is not by dividing it by 100. If it is a century year, then I have checked whether it is divisible by 400 or not, because if a year is century year, then it is leap year only when it is divisible by 400, and if it is not a century year, then if it is divisible by 4 it is leap year, and if not divisible by 4 it is not a leap year. Means for century year the test condition is from 400 has to be checked, and for non-century year divisibility by 4 is sufficient. So firstly we have to check whether a year is divisible by 100 or not. If it is divisible by 100, then we will come here and check if it is divisible by 400, it is leap year or otherwise not. And if it is non-century year, means the first test expression year modulus 100 equals to 0 becomes false, means the year is not a century year. In that situation I have checked it by the 4, because if it is non-century year, then the divisibility by 4 is sufficient to check whether the year is leap year or not. So for non-century year, if the year is divisible by 4, it is leap year, otherwise not a leap year. Here we can see that the nesting of conditions, nesting of if else has been done, and this way we can check whether a year is leap year or not. If in this program, if the year value is 2100, then it will firstly check 2100 is a century year. Yes, first test expression will evaluate to be true, then the condition will check year modulus 400 equals to 0 and it becomes false, then the control will come to the first else part and it will print the year is not a leap year. Okay, now move ahead. Here is another program to check to find the largest of 3 number, and here also I have used the concept of nested if else. Firstly, the 3 values, 3 numbers are to be entered. I have entered it in variable ABC and then checked if A is greater than B. If A is greater than B, I have tested A is greater than C also. In that case, I have printed A is greatest, otherwise C is greatest. If first condition A is greater than B true, then the another condition A is greater than C also checked, and it is greater than both, that A is greatest will print, otherwise C is greatest. If first condition A greater than B becomes false, means B is greater, then I have checked if B is greater than C also, it is same, then the B is greatest, otherwise C is greatest. This way we can find whether what is the largest of 3 number. I have entered here 24, 57, 46 and it will print 57 is the largest. Now this way the rest of the if else statement, means conditional statement, I will cover in next lecture. Let us meet in the next lecture. See you again. Thank you. Thanks a lot.